Yeah. That is so important because I walked out of that GP appointment not feeling at all validated. And then when I looked at kind of local support where I am, it was very much geared to men and boys, and those that had additional learning difficulties as well. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to have to do this myself. Oh, a typical female statement. I'm just going to have to do it by myself. And so I did, but there was a period of recalibration. You know, you have this information and your brain automatically starts sort of revisiting all those memories, a little bit like you were saying there with the flashback example that you had. It's almost like your brain is recategorizing all of the information, all of the experiences, all of the relationships, all of the everything, and being like, oh, now that makes sense. Now that makes sense. And it comes with a sort of sense of relief of, okay, I'm not just a broken human being who can't do life. But also, imagine what life would have been like if I'd known 20 years ago and had been able to accommodate myself sooner. And there's a whole journey to go on there in terms of coming to terms with all of that information, and then sort of figuring out who you are now that you've got all this information.
And welcome back to the Passionate Pioneer podcast, series 3. And we're now in 2026. Happy New Year to everybody. You know me, I am Beth Taylor. I am the Passionate Pioneer, and this podcast is all about your connection into spiritual awakening experiences and the path to joyful living, of course. And today I'm joined by Jenny Lucas. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Beth. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, you're welcome. My first guest of 2026. How exciting.
Very exciting.
So for people who don't know you, Jenny, would you mind giving us a quick introduction before we dive into your story?
Certainly, yeah. So I'm Jenny Lucas. I am a former secondary school teacher of 16 years. I know I don't look old enough to have a career that long. And actually, this year would be my 20th year in teaching if I was still teaching, which absolutely blows my mind. I have left my teaching career behind and become a qualified somatic trauma-informed coach and positive psychology practitioner following a late diagnosis of ADHD and then autism in 2022. I'm also mum to 2 ADHD daughters, and I'm balancing a day job with running a business that supports other late diagnosed ADHD women come to terms with this massive information that they've received a little bit later in life.
Wow. So autism, and there has been a rise in autism, hasn't there, Jenny?
Certainly in diagnoses, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know whether there has been a rise or whether we just understand it. We understand how to diagnose it now, but there's definitely been an increase. I thought it was mostly in children, but you're saying adults as well, and that's
Yeah.
really funny. So I mean, it's not funny. It's just funny because I had an experience the other day, and I was like, oh, I remember that from when I was a child. I wonder if that's on the autistic spectrum.
Mm. And it's funny, that is, there's lots of people that are having kind of what they're recognizing themselves in the
Flashbacks.
information that is out there. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. There are more people that getting diagnosed later in life with autism and ADHD, and there's a few reasons for that. One, it's never really been a thing that it was thought that women could have. And actually, adults couldn't be diagnosed with, I think it was ADHD, until this century.
Right.
And you couldn't be diagnosed with both ADHD and autism until 2013. So there's a whole swathe of people that have been missed because the criteria didn't exist, because all of the sort of information and testing has come from men and boys, and there had been no research into how it could present in women or girls. So there's lots of people out there that have been undiagnosed just because the information didn't exist.
Right. I'll tell you the funny flashback I had, and that was when I was about 10 years old, 11 or 12, something like that, before I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I used to walk on obviously walk on the pavements, and I wouldn't walk on the cracks of the pavement. I had to avoid them. I don't know why. I don't know. It wasn't a phobia. It wasn't like I was afraid of them. It was something about counting.
Yeah.
And I used to, I remember counting bricks and counting buildings as I went past them as well, and cars. And it was something I had to count like 20 cars before I could have a conversation or something.
Yeah.
That is
Interesting.
that is on the autistic scale, right?
It's definitely something that could be considered a symptom, if you like, in terms of that pattern recognition and the counting part of it. The other thing that flashed up into my head there was OCD in terms of that counting, but
Right.
there's a lot of crossover in terms of
Right.
how all these things can exist and coexist, and one can look like the other. And that's the other thing I think for women. A lot of women get misdiagnosed with things like generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar, emotionally unstable
Right.
personality disorder, because again, that the knowledge in the medical field is still quite limited in what it can look like.
And then I understand ADHD because I speak to a lot of women in business who have, or, probably about 70% of them have been now diagnosed with ADHD or recognizing it in themselves,
Yeah.
because we are high achieving women.
Yeah.
And, it's, we're always on the go. We can
Yeah.
multitask, and sometimes multitasking can be confused with ADHD or shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
where we're
Yeah.
just, oh, we'll try that. Well, that looks good. We'll go for that. And then we've got multiple projects ongoing, right? So,
Yeah.
how do you diagnose ADHD in adults, Jenny?
So that is a good question, and I should preface this by saying I'm not a clinician. Like I'm not, I can't diagnose people. But certainly for me, it was having more information about what ADHD looked like. And actually, ADHD was the first thing that I started to see more information online, in the media, and started to think, oh yeah, I do struggle with a bit of brain fog. I do forget things. I do feel like I've got this sort of hyperactivity, but inside my brain. So not that typical naughty little boy bouncing around the classroom. Like the hyperactivity for me very much happens up here. Like you say, that multi-passionista, like I can do a bit of this, I can do a bit of that, and I want to know that, and oh, jump, jump, jump. That was a sort of sign of it for me, from a mental perspective. And so, for a lot of people out there, they're starting to see this information and some of the symptoms and how it can show up in females and go, oh, that sounds a little bit like me. Um, and then end up going further down the rabbit hole and thinking, oh, actually, maybe I want to try and figure out how to get a diagnosis. That's a whole other can of worms. And not everybody wants to go for a diagnosis. Sometimes just having that information is enough to help people accept themselves or make adaptations in their lives so that they can live like you say, a more passionate and joyful and comfortable existence.
So, when did you make this? When did this kind of leap of faith happen for you? You said you used to be a teacher,
Yeah.
and then you stopped teaching. You went. So, what's the story? Let's go back and let's let the story unfold. Tell me what happened.
So for quite a lot of people, COVID happened and changed my life. Just because the ways of working all changed. So when the lockdown happened in 2020, I was working full time as a teacher. We were teaching from home and teaching online, but also during the course of the start of that year, I had been informed that I was being made redundant from my teaching post, and had this really painful, like 6 month period of having to work out of my redundancy, but during COVID and working from home. And the working from home, not having to pay for childcare, being able to sort of be in control of my own schedule a lot more opened up a kind of way of working for me that I just never would have had the opportunity to experience as a teacher who went out every day to be in a classroom in a school and in a very busy environment. And I started to think to myself, there's something quite nice about having a little bit more time at home, being able to spend more time with the kids, being a little bit more flexible in my workload and my work life balance. That kind of started to chip away at my sense of being a committed public servant, shall we say.
Right.
I started to have that sense of, oh, there could actually be more to life than being stuck in this sort of very rigid role. And then, so fast forwards to towards the end of 2020, I got another full-time teaching job in a different school. And that I only was in that job, I was only there for a year. That was a very weird year to be a teacher because they brought in all the COVID testing. We were having to do that with children in school. We had the bubbles. Like everything was just so weird. And I was having to do things as a teaching professional that I would never in my life have imagined that I would have to do, working with children. And I ended up actually being signed off work for a total period of 12 weeks during that sort of 2021 academic year because it was just too weird. My brain just couldn't cope with all of the demands that were on it at the time. And it was during that time of burnout, and this is again pre sort of any neurodiversity being on the horizon for me or the family, that I had a counselling session that I accessed through an education charity. And the person on the phone asked me to tell them about what I did to relax. How do you enjoy yourself? What are your hobbies? How do you relax? And I literally laughed down the phone at this person. And then there was a sort of silence on the other end of the phone. And I thought, oh no, they're asking me a serious question. And I went, what do you mean? How do I relax? And what are my hobbies? Like, I'm a teacher. I don't have time for that. And they were like, well, okay, well, just before I speak to you next time, like have a little think, write some stuff down. And it kind of, after that phone call, I had the dawning realization that this is obviously a thing that people do have. They do have hobbies. They do know how to relax. Like this was it kind of blew my mind. I was like, what do you mean that not everybody is absolutely stressed up to the eyeballs the whole time? And so that really like cracked open something inside me where I was like, there's obviously another way to live, and I am not living my life to the fullest here. And that kind of led me down the path. No, that and the particular working environment I was in that particular school led me to realise that actually continuing with a full-time teaching career was didn't have it in me anymore. I was no longer capable of holding all that stress. And so I resigned from that job and ended up doing a very part-time job for a little while before I worked for the company that I'm in now. And it was during the course of that sort of self-exploration. And alongside that, my eldest daughter was also experiencing some difficulties at school. She had these chronic tummy pains, and she would tell us multiple times a day, Mummy, my tummy really hurts. She had her appendix out. Like we went down a full medical route for that. They couldn't find a medical explanation, and the paediatrician said, this potentially is psychological. Can you look into treating her as if she's got anxiety and speaking to school and seeing if they can put some things in place for her. And they started treating her like she was a neurodivergent student and putting some little extra supports in for her, smaller group work, fiddle toys, movement breaks, and the tummy pains disappeared. And so it was kind of all of those things came together. We decided to investigate neurodiversity for her and get an assessment for her. And sort of as this is going along, and this is quite a common story for many parents, you're sort of starting to see things that she's experiencing and that professionals are saying about her, and you're going, oh, yeah, I used to be a bit like that. That sounds familiar. Oh, I do that too. And kind of, the light bulb started to ping, ping, ping. And so by the end of 2021, I was then thinking, maybe I want to investigate some of this for myself. And it was at that point that I went to my GP and said, I think I'd like to be assessed for ADHD, please. How do we do it? And kind of it then unfurled from there.
Wow. I think, I mean, COVID, although how horrendous it was for many people,
Yeah,
I think for a lot of women that I've spoken to, it was a turning point,
absolutely.
because you could finally stop
Yeah,
and reevaluate and say, okay, what am I doing here? What have I been doing?
yeah,
What do I want to do? And also, you suddenly stop, and when you suddenly stop, it's very confusing. It's a very confusing time for many, and I understand also the children and what you went through with the school. The school systems have changed, haven't they? I mean,
yeah.
it's not a system I would like to work in.
No.
For sure. But I think that the definitely 2020 was a turning point for many people. So the road started then with it was a combination of both then, right? Was you and your daughter?
Yeah, absolutely. And so she got assessed and ended up they discovered ADHD and autism in her, and I got assessed for ADHD, and it was during the during the GP appointment, when I said I'd like to be assessed for ADHD, he said to me, "And what about autism?" And I went, "Oh, I can't be autistic. Look, I'm having a conversation with you and I'm maintaining eye contact and I'm really empathetic." Like all of those massive stereotypes, I
Right.
couldn't be autistic. So he was like, "All right then." And we did the ADHD assessment. And then it was during the evaluation for the ADHD assessment where the assessor sort of hinted, perhaps you maybe also want to look at down the autistic pathway as well. I was like, okay, so I did, and ended up also being diagnosed with autism as well in that same year. So within a 8 month period, I had gone from seeking an assessment to having a diagnosis for both ADHD and autism, and kind of just sitting, and that's the end of that summer, and being like, well, this is brand new information. What the hell do I do with this? What happens now? Um, and that is a real wild ride for anybody out there that sort of has been through it or is considering going through it. That is something else. It really is.
Well, it's also the fact that, you got the diagnosis and you could have just continued. You could have found other work, or you could have gone back to school, the schooling, the teaching if you
Yep.
wanted to. You could have found other work. But instead you didn't, decided to turn it and to turn it in a positive direction, to not only help yourself more, but to help other women going through the same.
Yeah.
So that's a huge decision, Jenny, to start supporting yourself and be an empowering other people. So tell us why you decided to do that.
It was quite like so many people, you end up becoming your own ideal client, don't you, in a way. And what I discovered was a couple of things. One, when I got my diagnosis and I took the reports back to the GP and I said, "Here are my reports, what support is there out there for me, please?" And he looked at me and said, "One, I don't have time to read this report. I'm sure it's very interesting, but I don't have the capacity for that. And two, there is no support for someone like you. And I know that usually at the end of these reports, they give you a couple of pages of websites that you can go and visit. So I suggest that you go off and do that." And I came out of that appointment and was like, "What do you mean there's no support for someone like me?" And by that, he was inferring because I was a professional, I had a career, I had a family. How could life be so bad that I needed some kind of support? And then also being dual diagnosed with autism and ADHD, when I did start to seek some support, I found that when I was in autistic spaces, I didn't feel like I quite fitted in. And when I was in ADHD spaces, I didn't feel like I quite fitted in. And so this sort of the combo of being ADHD is its own unique experience. And I thought I need to create a space for other people that are like me, to, I don't want to use the words feel safe, but to feel validated and be able to share our experiences and,
Well, I
and
think
know that
safe
that is
is also a
normal
good
for
word
us.
to use, Jenny, because
Yeah,
because women, as women, we don't like to talk about.
yeah,
It's quite personal, and an
yeah,
ADHD and autism has a stigma to it,
absolutely.
and you don't really want to talk about it. So if you can go into a community where you feel safe
Yeah,
because other people are just like you,
yeah,
that is a safe community. So I think safe is right. Um, but also, the fact that you feel validated.
yeah. That is so important because I walked out of that GP appointment not feeling at all validated. And then when I looked at kind of local support where I am, it was very much geared to men and boys, and those that had additional learning difficulties as well. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to have to do this myself. Oh, a typical female statement. I'm just going to have to do it by myself. And so I did, but there was a period of recalibration. You have this information, and your brain automatically starts sort of revisiting all those memories, a little bit like you were saying there with the flashback example that you had. It's almost like your brain is recategorizing all of the information, all of the experiences, all of the relationships, all of the everything, and being like, "Oh, now that makes sense. Now that makes sense." And it comes with a sort of sense of relief of, okay, I'm not just a broken human being who can't do life. But also, imagine what life would have been like if I'd known 20 years ago and had been able to accommodate myself sooner. And there's a whole journey to go on there in terms of coming to terms with all of that information, and then sort of figuring out who you are now that you've got all this information.
That's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
It's a lot to unpack, yeah. And when you look around and think, who's going to help me with this? And there isn't anybody, it's quite a heavy weight to carry by yourself.
Yeah. So tell us how you how did you start? Because you've got all these websites you said, and that they said, oh, just go and take a look at these websites, and you're like, God, that's overwhelming. So
Yeah.
then how did you, because I know you wrote a book, and we're going to talk about the book in a minute. So, but because everybody, I think everybody has a book inside them, and to share your personal stories, and communities, I think, are really important. So how did that journey start with connecting? Where did you find these communities and these women?
So I sought community myself. I found quite great solace in social media, in other people that were further down the path than me, that were happy to sort of share their experiences. And actually, during the course of that year, before I had got a diagnosis, I actually started a TikTok account. Because when I first started my coaching work, it wasn't initially to work with neurodivergent women, it was to work with women in the public sector who were burned out like me, and to potentially also support teens as well who were experiencing anxiety. And so I thought I'll start a TikTok account. That's a good social media platform to find people to work with. And that then became like a vlog of my experience as a late diagnosed person. And it started off more as a kind of questioning, like, does anybody else feel like this? Or has anybody else experienced this? And that was a really lovely sort of gateway into meeting other people who had similar experiences. And then through looking for support from my daughter from our local authority, this really helpful, lovely woman sent back some information for us. And she mentioned a charity called 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐴ngel, who are based in a town near me, who work specifically with late diagnosed autistic people who don't have additional learning disabilities. And not just women, but a high prevalence of women that go through them. And they had a course called Exploring Being Autistic. And that was great. I got a place on that and ended up meeting up with sort of 8 other people who were in a similar position to me. And we had weekly sessions where we sort of contemplated various aspects of being late diagnosed. And that really gave me a great foundation. But you're right, when you say about it, going through those websites and being overwhelmed, I really needed somebody to sit with me and hold my hand and say, this is a good place to start. Check out this book or this part of this website, or, contact this group, and not just like, well, here's 15 websites, go and figure out what you need. That, you're right, that was far too overwhelming. So I had to break it down and find some community for myself.
Yeah, very overwhelming. And I would think, and you also question yourself probably, because you're like, well, I've been through half of my life, and
Yeah,
and I never knew this. So
yeah.
what do I do now? What's the next step? And how do I cope with this? Because once you've learned something about yourself, you can't unlearn it. You're like, no, now
Yeah.
I know, right? But it's empowering, but also overwhelming.
Yeah, that journey is
Um,
well and truly out the bottle. You can't put it back in.
right, exactly. So, once you're like, okay, I'm ADHD now. Okay, what do I do with that? And
Yeah,
I'm autistic. What do I do with that?
yeah,
So you can't put it back in the bottle. So okay, so you started, exploring these communities on social media. You had a TikTok account. You
yeah,
went to you did the course.
yeah,
And then how did you then I guess you slowly built your community, right?
yeah,
Organically with tell us how you did that, because that's an interesting story. Because people are trying to build communities these
yeah.
days.
And that's the age-old question, isn't it? How do you get more people into your community? So it really was interacting with other people in a similar position, and literally, when people would interact with my videos and leave comments, leaving comments back, literally having interaction with people like that, and also trying to find other spaces to be in as well. So I read Your Child Is Not Broken, which is a book by 𝐼_𝐸_Maver, about her journey as a SEND parent looking after her neurodivergent young person. And she had a space for parents as well who needed some extra support. So being in there and engaging in conversations and relationships in there. And it kind of just grew from there. I also had, in my previous sort of coaching business, I had a small mailing list which I had built up. I was a Reiki practitioner as part of that as well. And so I started sending out information to my mailing list about my pivot, if you like, in terms of the direction that the business was going in. And also put together a little freebie. So I was starting to use the information that I'd learned that was supporting myself and turned that into a freebie. And popped that out there and then started to share that in spaces where it felt relevant. We've got some local Facebook groups that have advertising days. So I started to sort of share it out there and start to build that sense of community. And then more recently, I have joined sort of local in-person networking groups, and it absolutely blows my mind every time I go to one of these groups and, you stand up and you have your minute to introduce yourself or whatever, the number of people, women mostly, that come up to me afterwards and say, oh yeah, I'm ADHD, or I've just discovered, or I'm seeking a diagnosis, or it's just, people that on the face of it you would look at and not, I mean, it doesn't have a look. Autism and ADHD doesn't have a look. You wouldn't look at somebody and go, you look a bit autistic. But do you know what I mean? In terms of that stereotype, people that are coming up and having these conversations that initially you would think, oh, you look quite kept put together, like you look like a professional person, and it's terrible because you're still fighting that sort of internalized ableism and those stereotypes. But
hi, I just wanted to pop on here just to say thank you so much for being here, watching this video and supporting my channel. It is my honor to bring you these stories from these incredible women who are passionate about their lives and have alchemized their spiritual awakening journeys from service to self to service to others. If you would like to be part of my Passionista community, just grab a free copy of my workbook, which you'll find a link below. It's called Your Passionista Journey Starts Here. And start making those small changes to your life that you need right now. Thank you again for being here. Love you to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you know when all the new weekly episodes are live. Thanks again, Passionista. Much love and joy. Now let's get back to the interview.
Such a number of people that are coming out of the woodwork now with this information and being like, and perimenopause, that's a good old thing for stripping away all the coping mechanisms that you thought you once had. So that is another reason why so many women are sort of finding out about their neurodivergence later on in life, because perimenopause just comes like a whirlwind through your life and wreaks havoc, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I believe, we talked about the COVID experience, but when we all went into lockdown and we all had these different experiences, as I said, I think it was a spiritual awakening moment for many people on the planet, because they were finally able to see, ask the questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? What's this? What am I, where's my joy? What hobbies have I got? Right. One of your questions, right? And I think it was a big moment for most people. And then we had the whole explosion of everybody online, social media, a lot of information, which we'd had before, but maybe not using it so much. And I think it gave people a voice, a platform where you can find the information and suddenly go, oh, look, there's another person like me.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And I think, there's a lot of people talk about labels. Why would you want to label yourself? Why would you want to label your kid? We have been labeled lazy, emotional,
all our lives,
all of the things, all our lives. What's really useful about having a label that isn't so negative is it helps you understand yourself. And you're right, that sort of awakening of 2020, and I am all about the woo. I definitely was part of that sort of spiritual awakening there. You start to go, why am I giving all my hours and my time to the man? Do you know what I mean? Why am I giving all my hours and my time to this sort of capitalistic society? Yeah, exactly. But you go, wait a minute, I'm working 5 days a week. I have 2 days off at the weekend where I'm knackered. I want to be able to be a good mum to my kids. I want my kids to have a good experience growing up. What do I actually want my life to look like? And like you say, we were all kind of collectively able to take that breath. And when you put down the things that you don't even realize you've been carrying, you go, I don't want to pick half of that back up, actually. Thanks very much. I've got used to a better, slower, more comfortable pace of life. And then with that comes all kinds of questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah,
You're questioning sanity.
Yeah.
Who am I? What have I been doing with my life? I've been asleep. Yes, you've been asleep. Yes, that's the question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sleepwalking through your life. Right?
Exactly. But then you go and you get to whatever age you are at that point, and you go, wait a minute, I haven't got forever. And lots of people come to these realizations, and you've spoken to some on the podcast where there's been it's almost been like a near-death experience, or there's been some sort of sudden shock moment in somebody's life where they've woken up and gone, oh my God, I need to do something here because I cannot keep living like this. Life's too short, etc. And for quite a lot of the planet, that was 2020.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a fascinating what happened there.
Well, that's the overlapping stories, is that, so, it was either, COVID, which was a big wake up call, or it was some type of, trauma impact, like a car accident or like you said, a near death experience, something like that, where the universe, or whatever you want to call it, creator, source, God, are going, wake up, stop sleepwalking. You're going, what are you doing? You've got a bigger purpose. You've got this to do or this to do, or why don't you find out more about yourself? And, what do you like? What do you mean? What do I like? I don't
exactly.
And you've got to start questioning yourself. So with all of this, these changes and this self-evaluation and the things that you've gone through, the experience that you've had, how have your relationships changed with yourself and friends, family, children, etc.?
That is a great question. And I have to say the relationship I've got with myself has changed the most, because you start to, as you say, you sort of starts that question of who am I? And within that comes a sense of awareness of how you treat yourself. And why do I speak to myself like that? For me, it was kind of turning that negative self-talk around, because so many of us have been socialized as a kind of, don't think too much of yourself, don't praise yourself, don't shout about your accomplishments. And we use the old whip and the carrot and the stick kind of, way of motivating ourselves to do things. And I think there comes a point where you go, why am I being so horrible to myself? And if being horrible to myself was going to work, surely it would have worked by now, and I'd be a fully healed and productive member of society. So questioning that relationship with myself and the concept of self-love, I always found that absolute ick. What do you mean self-love? Until I went, why am I reacting to it that way? Why am I not worthy of being a person that I look after in the same way that I look after my husband and my children and my friends? You know what I mean? Why am I not worthy of being treated in the same way that I treat other people? And that's a big old rabbit hole to go down.
Well, it's like the word selfish as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Selfish has got a very bad connotation to it, but it's not selfish to look after yourself.
Absolutely.
Self-love.
Because once you have that, and it really was like a flick, a turn of thought, kind of, if I look after myself and I am rested and fulfilled and comfortable and happy and I've found my joy, how much more capable and able am I going to be to look after those people round about me when I'm giving from a place of having something to give. And that was probably the most pivotal moment in my life and the whole journey. And that's, what I'm so passionate about teaching other people to do. Because once you see that, you can't unsee it. What I mean?
It all starts with self, doesn't it? It all starts with self. And once, like you said, it's a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
And if you're coming from a place of happy and joy and, not, positivity, but not, icky positivity, the world is not always sunshine and roses every day.
No.
And we wouldn't want it to be, because it's the adversity that brings us, oh, I don't want that. I know what
Yes.
I don't want because I've just had that experience.
Yeah.
And then we realize what we do want, but it is it's an unfolding, and I think once you're awake, I don't mean
Yes.
woke, I
No,
mean
no. I know what you mean.
awake. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just for our audience. I'm just like, I don't mean the woke. I mean like awake, and that means just understanding who you are and what's good for you.
Yeah.
That word selfish that people say, "Oh, stop being selfish," is because you're not pleasing them. You're not doing what
Yes.
I want you to do. Why aren't you doing what I want you to do? You're
Yeah.
selfish. Well, actually, yes, I am. Thank you,
Yeah.
is my response.
Absolutely. And it means that you are then more able to give to the other people. And I say, like my children,
Yeah.
I was always a very reactive parent, and I didn't like that about myself. And once I started questioning why I was so reactive, why am I so stressed all the time? Like, why is this little thing that they've done that is nothing sent me into a rage? Like, where is that coming from? Um, Understanding that and being able to accommodate myself has allowed me to be more emotionally available for those lovely two young people that I've brought into this world. And then being able to have those conversations with them about what I'm feeling, how I'm regulating myself, what that looks like, has then allowed them to develop their emotional intelligence about what's happening inside their brains and bodies. So they know how to better understand what's happening and regulate themselves too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I'm a Gen Xer as well, right? So, our parents came from and my grandparents, they came from that generation of, you're not allowed to have personal feelings about
Yeah.
things. If you've got an opinion, or you've got a complaint, it goes under the carpet, right?
Yeah, I'll give you something to cry about.
I'll give you something to cry about. I'll make you right. It's we were really suppressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Gen Xers were really suppressed, and I really like that, the fact that you've just pointed out that the more that you help yourself, you can help your children as well to become better people, to have a voice and an opinion and understand
Yeah.
their own emotions, so they can self-regulate.
Yes. And they know their opinions. They're not getting to that was my whole stick about them knowing about their brains and about how their brains work, is it so that they wouldn't get to 37 and suddenly be discovering who they are for the first time because they'd slept walked through their lives. And it
Right.
also means that they can stand firm in their power. They won't be as susceptible to being taken advantage of or any of those kind of things because they know what their opinions are. They know what they stand for. They're not going to be swayed by other people trying to gaslight them or manipulate them so much.
Right. So, okay, so my next question is about that. So um how do you support yourself on this journey? Have you got any daily practices and things that you do, especially understanding that you've got the ADHD and the autism combined, plus you're running a business and you've got a community. So how do you really, what are your practices? Tell us what you do on a daily basis.
So for me, the biggest single thing that's made a difference in my life is self-acceptance. And that means that if I wake up on a day where I have boundless creativity, I try and put myself in positions where I can harness that boundless creativity in a way that is going to benefit me best, whether that is sitting writing some sales copy or designing a new course or, doing lots of social media posts, something like that. And also accepting that not every day is going to be a boundless energy day, and some days I will wake up and feel crappy, and unmotivated and rubbish. And it's not like forcing through the fog and being like, okay, well, I feel crappy and rubbish today, so I'm going to allow that to be a thing. I'm not going to shame myself for that. I'm going to do whatever my body needs me to do today to rest. And I think that in itself, not gaslighting myself, has changed my outlook on life because it means I wake up the next day not feeling rubbish, not feeling shameful and guilty and all of those things. I wake up feeling like more rested because I've allowed myself to actually rest, and then can put that into whatever is coming up on the next day. So in terms of like, I don't really have a daily habit or a daily practice that I do. That awareness to just let the day take me as much as it can. I mean, I've got to be realistic about it. I've got two kids that need feeding and taking to school, and like, there's real life things that have to happen. But if there's a day where the laundry ends up piling up more than I would like it to, I don't beat myself up about it. I know that there will be a day that will come soon where I will be more capable to take those things on. And I just kind of let it be and I let myself exist in this body how I am feeling in the moment. And that, taking away that shame and guilt has really changed things for me.
Yeah, I really like that. I love that answer. That's great, Jenny. Yeah, because, it's like giving yourself permission, isn't it? It's
Yes.
okay. We're not perfect. I don't
Yeah.
like the word perfect because, you know, perfectionism, it seems to be a problem. We've all got to be perfect, and we're not perfect. We're human. We make mistakes. We beat ourselves up. And then to go back to what you said about, the words that you tell yourself.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're not good enough as a mother because you haven't done the washing today, or you haven't, right? Or, I've woken up late, or I'm not feeling great today, or you're not allowed not to feel great.
Yeah.
Don't
Exactly.
don't be lazy,
Don't be lazy. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. If you wanted to
It's
do it, you would.
it's ingrained in us, isn't it, to speak
Yeah,
badly to ourselves. And
yeah,
I think give yourself permission that, it's okay. You feel crappy today. It's okay that the laundry needs doing, but you don't feel like doing it. You have an off day. Everybody has an off day. It's not
yeah,
a problem. Doesn't mean it's an off year. Doesn't make it a terrible month. It's just
yeah,
you're allowed to feel crappy for one day.
yeah.
Or more than
Exactly.
one day. If you want to take a few days, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to slack off. It's okay to rest.
Yes.
People feel lazy if they sit. Oh, what have you done today? Oh, I felt really lazy. I just watched Netflix. Well, maybe that's what your body wanted. You wanted to turn
Yeah.
off your brain, and your body wanted to rest, and you just wanted to just watch something where you didn't have to really focus
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
challenge your brain, right?
Yeah. I think the prevalence of like chronic illness in society and in women in particular is huge. And I think that is because a lot of the time we've gaslit ourselves
Yeah,
through, oh, you'll be all right once you get there, or just, get up. Other people can do it, why can't you? Like, but you push through all of these different situations, and your body does eventually pay the price for it. So we
right.
do not have to earn rest to exist as human beings.
Correct. I always say that about joy. You don't have to, you shouldn't, joy is not a reward.
Yes,
Joy is
absolutely.
something that you should just give to yourself. Give yourself permission to have some joy moments. And if that means resting, taking a bath, going for a walk, reading a book, shutting out the world for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
just do whatever you need to do. Great. I've loved this conversation with you. I'd like to talk about your book. Tell us about your book, Jenny.
So in October 2025, I released a book called Autism, ADHD, and Me, Your No Bullshit Guide to Life After Late Diagnosis.
I love it.
Um, and it's really a kind of it's a start here guide for people who have had the experience like me. They've had a diagnosis, they've looked around and gone, help, anybody out there? And there's like no one is forthcoming. It's the thing I really wish someone had handed me and gone, you know where to start? Start here. This is a good place to start. And it's quite short. It's not, I know my audience. We're not going to be sitting down reading a big tome of information. And it's split up into small sections and chapters that people can dive in and out of. So if they're having issues with relationships, there's a chapter on that. If they're having issues, particularly with burnout, there's a chapter on that. Sensory profile, there's a chapter on that. So it absolutely can be read cover to cover. But it's also sectional enough that if people just want to grab a little bit of it, they can do that. Um, it is written in a dyslexia-friendly font as well because I wanted it to be really accessible, and it's also available as an audiobook as well as paperback and Kindle because some people just like listening to an audiobook while they're doing something else. If you've got an ADHD brain, it's not uncommon for you to be doing two things at once. And I also learned that some people, I am not one of these people, but there are people out there who like to have the physical book and be listening to it as an audiobook at the same time,
Oh,
which is amazing. Um, so it really is and a supportive start here guide for anyone who's kind of swimming in that, right, I've got this information, now what? What does this look like for me and where do I take this? It is hopefully that first step for people to feel validated and seen and some practical information for what to do next.
great. So practical guidance really from somebody who knows, who's been
That's
there
it.
and done it and got the wardrobe full of t-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll put the link in the show notes for people to to find that book, because I think that would be an amazing gift to yourself if you've
Yep.
been diagnosed with ADHD or autism or underdiagnosed. So you just need to check. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll
Yeah.
just check.
Absolutely.
Um, right. So I'm going to finish with two questions, Jenny. It's been wonderful speaking to you. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
So if I could go back to my younger self, I would be saying to her, we don't need to do it all. And actually, when people say that they are feeling a particular way, don't assume that that means they're feeling the same way as you. Because as a teacher, we're all tired, right? We're all waiting for the end of term. We're all, shattered under the workload. I genuinely had no idea that other people were not having the same experience that I was at that time. I thought everyone was as exhausted as I was. They were not as exhausted as I was. I really was feeling a different, deeper level of exhaustion. So I think having that information and being able to accommodate myself for that would made such a difference to me in my life.
Nice. And what do you hope your story will inspire in other women who are looking to live a more joyful life?
I would love for other women to realize their innate worth, that they don't need to earn self-love, and that being able to pour from a full cup into other people is the greatest gift that they could give to themselves and the biggest impact that you can then have on the rest of the world. That full cup ripple effect out into the world is going to change far more lives than working from a place of depletion. I think we need more of that in the world.
Yeah, amen. Couldn't agree more. A million thanks to Jenny for joining me today. Thanks to our audience for hanging out with us, and we hope you find it inspiring and empowering, as always. And you'll find all you need to know about both of us in the details below in the show notes. So until next time, this is the Passionate Pioneer and Jenny signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, another powerful Passionista conversation. I hope that this guest's journey, experience, and story has inspired something deep within you. Remember, it's about following the joy moments in your life. It's a beautiful dance with the universe. If you would like to dive deeper into your joy journey with me, you will find all the links below this video, including a link to a free workbook that will help you to start your joy journey. And until next time, Passionista, I'll say goodbye. Much love and joy.